Please turn to page 81 for beginner level narrative writing. The tools you will need for narrative writing are the following. First of all, you will have this sheet right here, which again you will find at the end of this section, the plan and talk sheet where you'll learn the steps to write a story. This top section here are the steps to write the story opening. And these bottom steps are going to be the actions that your students will go through until the story's done. So we have our story opening steps and we have our action steps until the story is done. You will also need, in order to plan the story, your do, which is an arrow, say, which is a dialogue bubble, or the think bubble for thoughts. You will need these cards to help plan the different actions in the story. If students are having trouble coming up with ideas, you will need to use some of the emotion cards, which is a little deck of cards with emotion faces on it. And you will also need to have, for fancy words, the heart and the eyeball, so that your kids can add fancy words for the 5 senses or for a character's personality trait or how they feel, their emotion. So these 2 cards are going to help to add adjectives, fancy words, to their writing if necessary. I would also suggest to go with the fancy words that you have a salt and pepper shaker with little beads inside so that you can shake it and say add fancy words to different students' writing. So we have our tools, we have our steps. The tools the students have are stapled together sheets of paper. I usually staple together about 5 sheets, 1 for each day. This does not mean that a student has to have 5 sheets already filled out. They may have a 3-page story and the story's done, then you rip out the leftover pages. What if their story needs more pages? Then you just staple more, but I usually have 5 pages. So you have your 5 sheets of paper stapled together. This has wide lines. Notice here, more narrow lines. It just depends on if the students are writing 1 or several sentences and they need more space on their pages. Now, we know what our tools are for you as the teacher, and then you know what your students are going to have as well. Along with the students' booklets, I would suggest that you still have an ABC card and the expert words on the back. Continue adding more and more expert words as the students learn them. I would have this card available if some students still need a little help with the sounds. Let's get started now on our beginner level narrative writing. I'm going to erase this page so that I can write a little bit more on it. In beginner level writing, what we're going to do are actually 2 pages of a story so that you can get the idea of how the steps work. I'm going to show you how this would be page 1 and then this would be page 2. Remember, the students, and I have this as blank pages here, so we'll just pretend like these are staples, page 1 and page 2. Page 1 is when we learn how to plan a story opening. Page 2 is going to be an action where the character will do, say, or think in the story. This booklet here that we're planning our story and writing it out could have 5 or more pages. It may have just 4 pages. It just depends on when the story ends for the student. They do not just write 1 page per lesson. You may have kids who end up having several pages filled out during their lesson because they can plan and write at a faster rate. Some who may just finish 1 page. It really just depends on the level of the student. Let's focus on the steps now. Begin with a chant. Even though everybody is going to be writing their own story, you would start with all the kids sitting at the table. They have their booklet there. Boys and girls, you're going to be writing your own stories. This is what a story has. A story opening. You say that. Story opening. Now, after you have your story opening, then you have actions, actions, actions until the story's done. What do you have? Actions, actions, actions until the story's done. What are all the parts of the story? A story opening, then actions, actions, actions till the story's done. Now, one more thing. When you have your actions, your character could do, so now we're going to add a do motion. Your character could say, so we'll go say, or your character could think. So we'll go and say think. Now let's add those parts to our story. Let's do our chant for our story. Story opening, then actions, 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 where you do, say, or think until the story's done. We know all the parts of our story. Now we're going to get started. Now that we know our chant, we're going to follow the steps to write a story. The students are sitting in the small group, and you're going to point to the top part of the chart and say, boys and girls, we're going to learn our steps to write our story opening. As we learn our steps, you're going to record information on your page so you can plan that story opening. First of all, draw a line down the top of your page there. Now what's nice about this is if they draw one line, they have two boxes. That's all they need are two boxes for their story opening page. So the first thing they do is they're going to draw a line to plan their story opening, and it needs two boxes. Step 1. Who's in my story? A person, an animal, or I am? So now the first step of their story opening is they have to decide. Are they going to write about a person, an animal, or are they in the story? Once they decide, they're going to, in this left box, draw the person, animal, or themselves. Quickly. You make a big deal about that. Let's say a child says, I'm going to write about a bear. Okay, draw your bear. So now when they draw, look how quickly everybody's drawing. So we're drawing our bear. Now we have our step 1. Who's in our story? A person, an animal, or I am. Everybody has their own character on their page. Step 2 is going to be when and where is this story happening? So I always go, boys and girls, your character can't be floating around. They have to be somewhere. So when is the story happening? Where is it happening? So now they decide, and then they're drawing their picture. So maybe a student is deciding it's going to be rainy and the bear's in the forest. So quickly they're drawing just a couple of key pictures. They're going to say the beginning of their story. The bear, or the dog, or I. They have to decide on who their character is in the setting, and then they start planning out that part. As they're drawing this, the teacher's just working with each individual student to start saying their sentence. We're going to go to step 2, action. What is my bear doing on a rainy day in the forest? So you're now going to have the students ask that action part for the beginning of their story. Notice, when they're saying the action part, they're saying, what is the, and that's your character right here. So my character was a bear, so we're saying, what is the bear? So what is the bear doing? And then you're going to add, on a rainy day in the forest. You're adding the setting. The reason why you're drawing the setting is it gives you something to help you plan your story with. So now, what is the bear going to do on a rainy day in the forest? And then the students are going to decide, and then they will put that in their action box. So again, I may be working, this is a sample of a student's writing, where they're writing about a bear. Another student may be writing about a dog. Another student may be writing about themselves. We're only walking through the steps, and they're planning their own stories. In this particular case, the student is saying a bear is in the forest and it's raining. So what is the bear doing on a rainy day in the forest? And they don't know. They're just stuck. They have no idea. They're walking around. I'm not sure. So then you can say to that student, well, let's make it interesting. And this is when you can give them the emotion cards. So whenever a student doesn't know what to write, have them choose an emotion card. This is really powerful because what happens is when you read stories, characters do things or things happen to characters and they react. They have an emotion. So if students get stuck, they don't know what to write. If they pick an emotion card and let's say in this case, we pick a card and the character's surprised, something surprises them, that's going to help them come up with an idea.